Wonderful, and hello to everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. So thank you very much for being here. I remember this time last year, we were just learning about this strange new virus that had come into the world and had just arrived on the shores of the United States. At this time last year, we had not even closed our offices or stopped our meetings. We hadn't taken any action. We were just trying to figure out how we were going to respond to this. And I had not used or even heard of Zoom or WebEx. My, how things have changed. And I think we are all thinking right now about how central technology has been to these changes, how important technology has been to help us manage through this period. The technological shifts that we have experienced have been profound. And here we are at CES, which is at the heart of the technological world. And we at SAG-AFTRA have the privilege of being at the point of convergence of technology, media, and working people. I want to begin these remarks with a statement about the elements of a good life. Several ancient Greek philosophers, when I was a student, I studied philosophy, had some version of this, but the one that I will point to comes from Epicurus, who defined the good life in the following way. It must involve the company of good friends. It must have the freedom and autonomy to enjoy meaningful work. And there must be a willingness to live an examined life in a core faith or philosophy. By the way, I took that from Jonathan Taplin in his book, Move Fast and Break Things. He encapsulated that well. And I just want to say from the outset, I borrow from a lot of people when I speak, and I will try to give you a sense of who they are as I'm talking through it. But what I hear in this comment from Epicurus is balance. Technological change can be profoundly good for us, but that change can also bring profound misery and many bad things to our life. Changes must have balance and countervailing forces. And this is where unions come into the picture. We serve as the watchdogs and the protectors. We help to balance things out for working people who otherwise can be crushed by these changes. I'm going to tell you a story today about this intersection between technology and storytelling. I can state something that for many people have become obvious. In 2020, Silicon Valley ate Hollywood. What do I mean by that? I mean, on one level, we used to go to movies and now we sit on our couch to consume entertainment. And of course, we were doing that increasingly already. You're going to hear from one of our panelists, Jeff Cole, something that he stated in late 2019, as this pattern was already moving ahead. And he noted in October of 2019 that the Emmys, which was at the center of television, traditional television, was dominated by these new Silicon Valley companies. And that was in September of 2019. And in November of 2019, Disney Plus came into the world. And in October, between those 2 months, Jeff realized that that was the death of traditional television and the rise of the digital era, the digital streaming era. And he was right, and that was prescient. So the pandemic accelerated a trend that was already here. And now we have all around us these digital platforms: Netflix, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, HBO Max, Peacock, Paramount Plus, Apple TV, et cetera, et cetera. So on the consuming entertainment side and the storytelling and where we get our stories, that has changed. But I mean so much more than that when I talk about Silicon Valley eating Hollywood, because Silicon Valley is eating many industries. And for our industry, for our workers, it has meant a swiftly changing work environment. The pace and demands of work have increased. Budgets for productions have gotten smaller. So what does this mean? This means that people are asked to go into work earlier and to stay later. It means that people are asked to do more on a television set because audiences now have bigger pictures with bigger pixels and more pixels, so they are able to see more. For us, that means that our stunt performers, people who do the big explosions that we see in television, are asked to do bigger, faster, stronger stunts in more compressed time periods. It means that people are doing more when they work. And it also means that compensation is changing. And in many ways, without the countervailing force of the union, people are being paid less. So one, we experience in this industry what people are experiencing elsewhere, which is the bargaining leverage that people have for their wages is getting less and less. And this begins to hollow out the middle class. And this is happening with our members as well, and will continue to happen if we are not careful. We have a unique payment structure in this industry, something known as residuals, which are payments that people receive whenever their work is exploited. So anytime you see a rerun or anytime you see a television show that showed last year, someone is getting paid for that. The people who contributed to that are getting paid for that, in addition to the company. And in the past, there was a window structure, what we called windows, which meant that a show would come out on the movie, and then it would move to a DVD, then it would move to paid television like HBO or to basic cable or primetime television. And every time that happened, people received a little bit of a payment. The company received $1, people received 10 cents. And that is how people have made a living. But now when you think about it, when you watch Netflix, all of those shows sit up there on that platform, and that's where they sit. Increasingly, windows are going away. And that means the original bargain that people had for their upfront compensation. You give me $1 now, and over the course of exploiting this television show, I'll receive an additional 50 cents. That's potentially going away. It becomes harder for people to make a living. Again, that becomes our role. And we have put in place structures to ensure that while that product is sitting up there on a platform, people continue to be paid. But without that countervailing structure, people would not, workers would not. The work environment is changing, compensation is changing, the ability to protect one's image and likeness and their reputation is changing. So these are the tools for a performer, for our members, to make a living. It's the ability to say, yes, you can use my image and I'll receive compensation for that, and the ability to say no when you don't want that for political reasons or for reasons that you're not getting paid enough. But if you think about media and the fragmentation of media and what has happened, which is people's image on the internet throughout the world with almost no ability for people to manage that, their ability to protect their image can be frittered away if we are not careful. Gabrielle mentioned deepfakes, which is another technological shift, which means even the image that I have that I want to protect, that I want to have out there, can be manipulated in deeply disturbing and unsettling ways that can affect a career or a life. These technological changes are having a tremendous impact on our members and on working people. But they're also having an impact on the larger economy, where increasingly a handful of private companies are dominating the shape of the market. We're moving away now from the principles that were established in the 20th century as a result of good government oversight, where there was a separation between the people who produced product and the people who distributed and exhibited product. You couldn't own a theater and a production company at the same time. There were rules around that, and those rules increasingly are going away. You can have a producer, Netflix or Disney Plus, that is also the distributor and the exhibitor. You watch that show on Netflix or Disney Plus or any one of these other platforms. And the lines that separated those companies are disappearing. And this has profound consequences for the economy. There's an opportunity for self-dealing and for conflicts of interest in these companies. And it's increasingly difficult for people to understand how to separate that and to understand what's actually happening underneath the hood of the companies. And that means that efforts to have good antitrust are almost non-existent right now. It's hard for people to understand how these companies work, and it's hard for our legislators to. How does one have oversight over an algorithm? What does good legislation even look like? We in this industry and at SAG-AFTRA, we're close to these companies, about as close as we can get. So we have to be the ones to ensure that legislators have the information that they have. We have to participate in the legislative process. We have to participate in the regulatory process as much as possible to ensure that there continues to be good oversight by public entities, by governments, by people, by citizens, so that technology is serving the interests of all, as opposed to the interests of just a few. Again, we knew that this was coming. Back in 2017, I gave a speech talking about FANG, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google, which was a term that had been tossed around. And many commentators talked about FANG taking over the world. When you add Microsoft in there, these are the companies that are increasingly shaping the global economy. And one of the first industries that they disrupted was the media industry. So again, that has been our role. There are fewer and fewer entities with the capacity to push back against companies like this in a world where they have an unrivaled ability to donate to politicians, to have lobbyists in state capitals, in DC and across the world, and to shape that regulatory environment, to shape the economy. And it is only through collective action. It is only through vehicles like labor organizations that we as a society make sure that we push back, not to eliminate, not to shut down, but to ensure that there is a balance, to ensure that people can have meaningful work, to ensure that technology, as Gabrielle just stated, serves society, and society is not serving technology. We embrace technology at SAG-AFTRA. We always have, and we must. But we also embrace this concept of balance. And we embrace the power of collective action. So along with Gabrielle and all of us at SAG-AFTRA, I want to welcome all of you today. This is going to be a fantastic set of events, set of activities that we will see throughout the day. We welcome you and thank you for being here.